Welcome to Anime Recaps. In this video, we will explain Chunibyo Demo Koigashi Tai Season 1. This anime tells the story of a high school student who once experienced Chunibyo, a syndrome that makes teenagers have their own hallucinations. Embarrassed by his past, he hopes that while in high school, he can live a normal life like other students. Unfortunately, his friends in high school actually have the same past as him. Will he succeed in realizing his wish to live a normal life like an ordinary student? Let's find out in Chunibyo Demo Koigashi Tai Season 1. Chunibyo Demo Koigashi Tai Season 1 is a series that tells the story of Chunibyo. Chunibyo is a colloquial term in Japan that describes a syndrome experienced by middle school students in their second year. This syndrome allows junior high school students to claim themselves or their identity as someone who has a different character from their original one, where a person who suffers from this syndrome will imagine having special abilities or special diseases. Chunibyo Demo Koigashi Tai Season 1 begins by showing a teenage boy named Togashi Yuuta who looks nervous because he will soon enter high school. Yuuta used to have Chunibyo syndrome when he was in middle school. At the time, he had identified himself as a dark flame master. That afternoon, when Yuuta was tidying his things in his apartment room, he accidentally met a girl named Takanashi Rika, trying to get down from the upstairs balcony using a rope. Rika, in middle school, experienced Chunibyo syndrome, where she identified herself as a devil eye, but Yuuta didn't know about it. The following day, Yuuta goes to his school to start his first day as a high school student. While waiting for the train at the station, he met a cheerful girl named Nibutani Shinka, who warmly greeted Yuuta first. At the same time, Yuuta reunited with Rika, whom he had seen on the apartment's balcony yesterday afternoon. Arriving at the classroom door, Yuuta first looked around the classroom and all the new students in the class. After knowing that none of his classmates had been in middle school with him, he looked relieved. He had deliberately avoided his middle school friends because he was ashamed of the Chunibyo syndrome he had experienced before. After Yuuta sat in his chair, a male student named Makoto Ishiki approached him and invited Yuuta to have a chat with him. Shortly after, Yuuta noticed that Rika and Shinka were in the same class as him. At that time, Rika came to Yuuta and asked him to take her to the school health unit because her eyes suddenly hurt. But actually, what Rika felt was just the Chunibyo syndrome that she still had. When they arrived at the infirmary, Rika told Yuuta that she knew Yuta's past when he was in middle school. Hearing this, Yuuta became panicked and embarrassed. After that, Rika showed the demon eye hidden behind her eye patch. It was just a fake demon eye because she only used eye contact to make the color of her cornea look different. When class ended, Ishiki invited Yuuta to go home with him. But before he could leave, Yuuta had been called by his homeroom teacher to meet her at the office. The teacher asked Yuuta to accompany and bring Rika home together because they live in the same apartment unit. After arriving at the apartment, Yuuta helped Rika move some things to Rika's room. The following day, when Yuuta had a sweet dream, he was suddenly surprised by Rika, who was already in his room, neat in uniform. She deliberately came to Yuta's room to invite him to go to school together. On the way to school, Rika asked Yuuta about his parents. He said that his father works in a factory located outside the city. Arriving at school, Shinka approached Yuuta and asked him to accompany her to the science laboratory room. While cleaning up some practical items, Yuuta was surprised by Rika, who suddenly appeared behind the anatomical statue.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
It turns out that she deliberately came to the laboratory to take some chemicals to give to her pet cat because the energy from her cat had run out. Again, Rika was acting strange because of her syndrome. Hearing about cats, Shinka briefly remembered her senior named Tsuyuri Kumin, who said that her cat was missing. Shinka and Yuuta immediately went to Kumin to take her to see the cat that Rika had just found in Rika's apartment. After arriving at Rika's apartment, Kumin said that it wasn't her cat because its body's structure was different from her cat. While examining the cat, Rika's older sister named Takanashi Toka suddenly appeared. Toka then invited Yuuta to talk and asked him to care for her younger sister, Rika. Seeing Yuta's doubtful reaction, Toka then threatened Yuuta with a video recording of him in the past when he still had Chunibyo syndrome. Yuuta looked panicked and tried to grab the tape. He even deliberately stole the tape secretly when he left Rika's apartment. Toka realized that Yuuta had stolen her recording, and she immediately ran after him. Rika, who saw this, helped Yuuta and tried to fight her older sister. And as predicted, Rika lost the battle. One day when the school was holding a community outreach with grade 1 students, Rika asked Yuuta to meet her on the school grounds. She said that she would create a new community at the school. Yuuta was forced to promise to help her gather new members who were willing to join the community. However, he still has a hard time finding new members because the community initiated by Rika still doesn't have clear goals and activities. The next day, a girl named Dekamori Sanai barged into Yuta's room without permission and immediately woke Yuta from his dream. Dekamori has acute Chunibyo syndrome like Rika and knows about Yuta's past. She is a high school student who goes to the same school as Yuta but is in a different class. While at school, Yuta and his friends came to the teacher's office to meet their homeroom teacher. Yuta reluctantly accompanies Rika to take care of the new community's licensing initiated by Rika. The homeroom teacher still can't allow the community because they still lack one member. However, the teacher allowed them to use the school warehouse as their base camp if they were willing to clean it themselves. The next day, Shinka, knowing that Rika's community still lacks one member, decides to join the community. This made Yuta overthink because he thought she had intentionally joined the community because of him. One day, Shinka visited Yuta's house to play and talk together. She had come to Yuta's place to take her secret book, which Yuta had accidentally brought. While Yuta was making hot tea in the kitchen, he found Shinka rummaging through the lockers and cupboards in his room. Shinka, who realized that her actions had been caught by Yuta, immediately asked him to return her secret book. Yuta, who was curious about the book, suddenly opened and read the book's contents. The book made all the notes about the Chunibyo syndrome that Shinka had experienced in the past. Shinka, who realized that her secret had been exposed, became panicked and embarrassed. She then explained that when she was in middle school, she often claimed to be Mori Summer. After that, she immediately tore her book in front of Yuta. The next day, the homeroom teacher called Rika and Yuta to the teacher's office to discuss Rika's drastically dropping math grades. She explained that if Rika's grades were still low, their community would be in danger of being disbanded. Hearing that, Rika immediately tried to study harder. However, because Rika's mathematical ability is indeed poor, she negotiates with the homeroom teacher so that her community is allowed to be active. Instead, they will regularly clean the school's swimming pool. One day, Ishiki approaches Yuta and tells him that he got a love letter from someone, but Ishiki still doesn't know the girl who sent the love letter. They were trying to find out who the girl in their class had secretly placed the letter on Ishiki's desk. Yuta and Ishiki then showed the letter to Shinka to check if she recognized the letter's handwriting. Yuta seemed eager to investigate the mysterious girl. He even made a notebook with the names of all the girls in their class. Unfortunately, the notebook fell and was found by Shinka. The following day, Shinka asks the rest of the class who owns the notebook because she thinks that the notebook's owner is a perverted student. Ishiki, who feels guilty about Yuta, decides to confess that he is the owner of the notebook. Ishiki was even willing to accept the punishment by shaving his hair bald to atone for his mistake. He said that confidently while boasting about the responsibility and demeanor of a real man. However, Ishiki actually didn't want to shave his hair until he went bald because he only said all those words to make himself look cool in the eyes of the female students in his class. Unfortunately, the female students are still not convinced that Ishiki dares to shave his head until he is bald. So Ishiki was forced to ask Yuta to shave off his hair at the Rika community base camp. When summer vacation arrived, Rika invited her friends to visit her grandparents' house, located in the mountains. On the way to her grandparents' house, Rika looks quiet and less enthusiastic. Arriving at the house, Rika's grandfather seemed annoyed with Rika, who was still wearing a blindfold and had a strange attitude due to her Chunibyo syndrome. In the afternoon, Toka invites Yuta to go to the shrine, which is her father's burial place. At the shrine, Yuta joins in praying for Toka's father to be blessed by the gods. At the same time, Toka explained why Rika still had Chunibyo syndrome. She still can't let go of her father, who died when she was still in middle school. So Rika is still childish and full of imagination to escape from reality. Hearing this, Yuta becomes sympathetic to Rika and intends to help her recover from her trauma. In the evening, when Yuta and Rika were about to go visit the old house belonging to Rika's parents, they were stopped by Toka. Luckily, they managed to break through with their strange behavior and Parker stunts. When they arrived at Rika's old house, it was found that the house had been demolished, and only an empty expanse of land was left. Moments later, Toka appears and tries to convince Rika to stop acting weird and try to escape the imagination of Chunibyo syndrome. However, Rika, who felt annoyed and angry because she couldn't fight her older sister, decided to immediately go and run away from that place. Yuta became confused because Rika suddenly disappeared from there. After searching various places, he finally found Rika on the train heading to the city where they lived. Yuta was forced to enter the train to accompany and watch Rika. After arriving in their city, Rika asked Yuuta for permission to be allowed to stay one night at his apartment because she forgot to bring the apartment's key. Yuuta then let Rika sleep in his sister's room. At this point, Rika seemed to have started to like Yuuta. The scene changes to the moment where the students are preparing for a performance for the school's annual festival. Rika and all members of her community discussed what activities they would do at this festival. Shinka then proposed an idea to make a drama show about Rika's demon eye role with Yuta's dark flame master. One day when Yuuta and Rika were chatting on the school roof, Rika suddenly slipped and almost fell. With a worried expression, Yuuta immediately ran toward the balcony to save her. After that, she immediately hugged him tightly while crying. From that day on, Yuuta seemed to have started having feelings for Rika and secretly told Ishiki about it. At night when Yuuta and Rika came home from school together, the umbrella they were using suddenly fell near the lake, and they decided to take the umbrella. When they arrived at the lakeside, somehow, the atmosphere turned romantic, and Yuuta started to express his feelings for Rika. Since that night, they have been officially dating. One day before Toka left the country, she met Yuuta and advised him to help Rika accept reality. Yuuta, who understood those words, finally persuaded Rika to take off her blindfold and leave the Chunibyo syndrome. Time passed, and the scene shifted to the moment where Rika had changed and had become more mature. She even intends to disband the community she has initiated before, but Dekamori was against it and asked Rika to consider it. One day, Rika tells Yuuta that she will visit her grandparents' house. Yuuta then escorted Rika to the station and accompanied her before she left. The following day, while Yuuta is at school, he finds out that Dekamori has left Chunibyo syndrome and is behaving differently. She suddenly changed because she heard Yuta's words earlier when dropping Rika off at the station. While at home, Yuta's younger sister informs him that Rika's belongings have been moved to her grandparents' house. That means Rika left Yuuta on purpose and will never come back. Hearing that, Yuuta immediately rushed to Rika's grandparents' house to persuade Rika and bring her back with him. After arriving there, Yuuta immediately climbed onto the house's roof and approached Rika's bedroom window. As a result, he is misunderstood as a thief by Rika's grandmother. Fortunately, Yuta's friends came and immediately helped him. After that incident, Rika finally felt touched by Yuta's sincerity and decided to get back together with Yuuta. She begins to learn to accept reality and let her father go. The film closes with a scene where Rika returns to being a demon eye girl like when she first met Yuuta. However, Rika's character when experiencing Chunibyo syndrome makes her much happier, and Yuuta is happy with it. The moral that can be learned from this anime is that people who are childish or imaginative around us may have had deep wounds or trauma in their past, and they use that world of imagination to escape painful reality.